on average, just in the United States, about 220 people die every single day from an opiate overdose. By the time we finish this show, 8 to 10 people are going to die from an opiate overdose. If we get even one person, one viewer with this program that we might be able to help with some of the information that's shared on here, then it's all worth it. Hey everyone, it's Glenn Victor. Welcome to another edition of the Dare Me podcast. Peace. Hope y'all are doing good. This is episode 23. Holy camole, can hardly believe it. And it's just yours truly on the show today. I wore my shirt. There you go. Brace yourself. I'm back. Actually, I stand corrected already. We do have our co-host and producer of the show, Dean Baker, along for the ride, and he is standing by. We'll bring him on in just a second. What I meant by yours truly only today is we have no other special guests on the show like we have the past several weeks and several times over the course of the show. So, yeah, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into the conversation about addiction and recovery with your old pal Glenn Victor today. Coming to you live from Sacramento, California, where it is 6 o'clock this Sunday evening. And now we're going to head all the way over to the East Coast to Orlando, Florida, where it's 9 o'clock in the evening. And there's our old pal Dean Baker standing by live at the Post Effects Digital Studios in Orlando. How's it going today, Dean?
Good evening, Glenn. Things are going well. It's just hotter than hell in Florida. But I did hear you guys have a hurricane hitting the coast of California.
In fact, I got to send a shout out to my friend Bill Kelsey. Bill, if you're watching, I apologize. I didn't get back to you today. He was a little bit concerned. He texted me and left a voicemail. I was just so busy getting ready for the show that I wasn't able to reply to him, wondering, if I was going to be in the path of that thing. And, of course, I'm so far north and inland here in Sacramento, not a whole lot of concerns. It is a little bit cloudy today, and they're saying we may get some rain from it and all, but having lived in Orlando for 30 years, Dean, and you know the story, man, having survived some hell of a hurricanes there, even being an hour inland from like Daytona, hour and a half from the West Coast there, I'm not worried about this thing at all, I have definitely weathered my share of hurricanes and even had some pretty serious damage to the house and my vehicles, a couple times there in Orlando. So appreciate the concern, Bill, and anybody else who was wondering. I guess they are taking a little bit of a hit in South California. I know I saw a brief thing on the news. It was hitting in the Baja area of Mexico and into South Cali. But I think we're going to be okay, Dean. Yeah. Hey, I got to ask you, bro. Looks like you got a nice piece of pie sitting next to you there.
Oh, that's a little dinner. I'm going to push that out of the
little dinner.
It's actually a little Chinese food.
Oh, is that what that is? Oh, yeah. It looks like it might be a piece of cheesecake with cherries or something, but I haven't had anything to eat yet today, so after the show
today... Sorry to
Mm-hmm.
have that in sight, but I haven't... I've been kind of on the computer all afternoon, so...
Oh, hey, I get it, man.
You forget to eat sometimes.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, when you're doing stuff and you stay so busy.
Right now, yeah.
What's that, Dean?
I know it's in your mind. Cheesecake and pie.
Yeah, yep. And, when you're so busy getting ready for the show and doing different things, sometimes we just eat on the fly,
Absolutely.
Well, hey, once again, y'all, I kind of kept Dean busy right up to the wire. We've loaded quite a few slides. I think we got about 20 slides and then 3 short videos we're going to show on the program today. And I attended a couple of events over the past few days that these photos and videos are from. One of them was from what was called the Fentanyl Awareness and Action Summit in Sacramento. And holy camole, was that a cool event! I mean, it was, of course, a horrible event to have to even have. What I will say is, I give props to those that organized the event and put it together. And we're going to take a deep dive into talking about that event. Before we go any further, though, I'm looking, we have several viewers already and
Yeah.
listeners. Shout out to y'all.
And a
Thanks for
comment.
tuning
Looks
in.
like there's a comment up there. Shebang.
Yeah, we got Shivang in the chat room. He says, "What's up, y'all?" And Shivang, we miss you here in Sacramento. And hey, there's an old friend of mine. I was going to do a shout out to Pete Falk from the D, is in there. Old friend of mine from Garden City, and we were DMing each other today, and we're going to make a effort to meet up while I'm in Detroit next week, and it'll be truly a reunion, as you know, Pete. Man, I was trying to think how long it's been since we've seen each other, because I moved to Orlando like at the end of '91, and I think it was even a couple of years before that. So it's going to be a hell of a reunion over 30 years. And hey, we want to say hi to Kelly, who just chimed in the chat. One of our regular viewers and listeners, hoping to spend some time with several people when I'm up in Michigan next week. Man, it's just like I always get pulled in a million directions when I go there, because that's where I grew up. I lived there the first 30 years of my life. Still have a lot of family there. I have four sisters, a brother. They all got kids. Some of them kids got kids. Uh, Pete just wrote 38 years, bro. Oh my God. How could it possibly be that long? We were like best friends, man, through like all of like junior high school and buddies in high school. And oh man, do we have some stories, because we used to party a lot. Pete, by the way, y'all, is, and I'm looking forward to an update on talking to you about this, bro, but Pete was a drummer, rock and roll drummer, and grew up in a musical family. And man, really looking forward to talking music with you, bro, when we get a chance. So anyway, yeah, as I just mentioned, y'all, I'm going to be headed to Detroit, Michigan. My nephew Jason Bakashua, by the way, and if that name sounds familiar, I'll tell you why in a second, and his beautiful wife Chantel are having their wedding reception on Friday. And so I'm going back to attend that, and it'll truly be like a family reunion. Got a big family, as I mentioned. So that's the main purpose for the trip, but I'm going to actually be up there for a whole week, and I got a couple of things that I'm planning on doing there. In fact, one that I just decided I'm going to do today because of the information that you sent to me, Pete, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. I've got some slides that I captured kind of at the last minute, and we're going to talk about this event going on next Saturday that is a fundraiser to help combat opioid and drug addiction, and it's going on at the Motor City Casino, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. So anyways, moving along, hi to everybody that's already participating in the show with us today, and so glad y'all are with us here. That kind of brings me to where I kind of feel like I'm at with this show right now. I kind of feel like, I don't know if you can relate, Dean, but I kind of feel like it's like, taking a big deep breath and just kind of stepping back, looking at the big picture, because I'm alone here in the studio today at the Dare Me podcast studio here in Sacramento, and it's just me and you, Dean, and it's episode 23. And man, have we done a lot with this show since we started it. It just blows my mind. Um, all the different topics we've covered, all the different guests that we've had on the show. the way the show has almost kind of like taken on a life of its own. This format we've kind of flushed out that we kind of move along with, where we have these slides we show at different times, and sometimes we have video. We talk about drug addiction in the news and the latest on the opioid and fentanyl epidemic and all that kind of stuff. And the show, not to use the cliche, but it truly has taken on a life of its own. And and I'm going to talk a little bit about, where we go from here with the show and what the future plans are and all. But it has been a busy summer with this show. A lot of travels and everything like that. We did last week live from Miami. Man, we recapped some other trips I took with friends of mine, Shebang, Mark. We went to God, Mount Shasta, Lake Tahoe a couple of times, Vegas, live from Vegas, just all over. And then next week, like I said, I'll be in Detroit. And so we're going to go live from Detroit City, the Motown edition of the show next week. And we may have, if it all works out the way I'm hoping, we may have them boys from Rare Hearted on the show, or maybe even at least one of them. That boy Shu, and man, you've heard me talk about him on this show before. If you're a regular viewer or listener, they are such talented artists. Young guys in their 20s, right there in Detroit City, making music that is off the hook. And while I'm there, we may get a chance to interview them live. Either way, though, we're going to have them on the show soon. So, anyhow, with all that said, yeah, it's been so busy and. Just so many twists and turns this show has taken. Sometimes I truly don't even know what the topic is going to be or who may or may not be a guest on the show till like Friday, a couple days before the show. And it always seems to work out just fine, though. We've had a couple that we did by literally the seat of our pants. We had that one edition a few weeks ago where we actually had to delay the show by an hour just because we were still doing prep for it. But hey, it's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want with it, and we continue to do this live thing just because it's kind of cool, like we were just talking about. We got a half dozen people watching live right now and listening. We've got, God, I'm looking here. We got about a half dozen people in the chat, and we're so grateful for everybody who does participate live. And a little bit later in the show, by the way, we'll flash a phone number if anybody wants to call in, talk to us live. We can send you a link where we can put you on camera on the show, which we've done before. And of course, any questions or comments you may have, you can do in the chat as well. So yeah, we continue to do the show live, which is a little bit unusual for a podcast. Most people record them and then post them on the different platforms for people to watch or listen to whenever they may want to. Dean and I talked about this before we ever started the show, though, because this show was in planning stages for months before we finally kicked it off way back on, I remember the date, Sunday, March 12th, which happened to have been the day after my 2-year anniversary of being clean off of them fucking opiates that I got hooked on. And, we just decided that we'd give it a shot and go live and see how it went. And I just love it. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a adrenaline rush. It's a little bit exciting being live. Reminds me of my old radio and television days. If you follow my stuff, and of course, Dean, I had a long career, 30 years working in the news media in both Detroit and Orlando. And so going live kind of gives you that little rush you get of being live on the air and all that. I've thought about just doing a recorded version, and that way we got less stress and pressure of trying to hit that 6 o'clock mark every fucking Sunday or 9 o'clock on the East Coast. but it is kind of cool getting live interaction from people, and again, it's kind of fun being live. So,
Yeah, that's
certainly the
I
plan is
always
to,
opt for live. I always opt for live. It's
yeah,
just because your time's important. You want to spend
yes,
most of the week trying to figure out how to fix what you said, and then you get so
yeah,
critical about this. Live just brings a whole new. We couldn't
component,
talk to Kelly and Shebang
yes,
and all that without some
yeah.
being here live, and
I agree, Dean. I
yeah.
agree 100%. And so, yeah, as far as that goes, we're definitely my full intention to stay the course, and keep doing what we're doing. In fact, I've said it on this show many, many times, and I'm going to do a little recap of the purpose of our show, like I do every week, and talk about our acronyms and hashtags. But, you know, there's been times where I've kind of second guessed myself about, man, what are we doing here? Am I wasting my time? Because this thing is a lot of fucking work. This little couple hours we go on the air goes by like that. But there's a lot of work that goes into putting this show together, prep time and promos, doing all them fucking reels and stories. Because if you don't promote it on social media, how you gonna grow your audience? And we're out there on. God, I always say it. What is it, like 4 Facebook pages? Yeah, I think 3 or 4 different YouTube channels. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter, which is now X. We're on the new one, Threads. We're on TikTok. And you got to post on them things and come up with creative ideas about how to get people's attention and all that stuff. So anyway, it's a lot of work, and sometimes I do wonder. And I got my little dog here bugging me for treats next to me. I always got a shit ton of treats to give her so she doesn't start barking while we're live on the air. That's another thing cool about going live. Anything can happen, and has on this show a couple of times. But anyway, my little buddy Jazzy next to me here bugging me for a treat. Um, but anyway, so I guess where I was going with that, y'all, is that by going live again, it does kind of take on a different component, and so oh, I know what I was going to say is sometimes I do second guess myself and say, man, what are we doing here? Are we even making a difference? Are we putting all this work and effort into this thing and not even really, getting out there the way we had hoped to? And I got a message as recent as today from my old friend that I've already mentioned on this show, Pete. And Pete, thank you, man. Thank you. That means like the world to me when we get comments like that, because we do get them. Messaged me that I'm paraphrasing here. The DM he sent me was just, man, what we're doing is a great thing. The message we're putting out there is a good thing and helping people. And that means the world to me, bro. I appreciate that. And, he just even gave a thumbs up on that live in the chat, and we've gotten comments like that from people around the country. In fact, the very first episode we did, a friend of Dean and I's, Rob, thanked us for what we're doing and for putting myself out there the way I have. Not that I'm trying to take credit for anything, it's just what we're doing. And he shared with us, and I know he wouldn't mind me saying this, that his brother is actively struggling with addiction. And Rob, if you see this, bro, we really hope he's doing okay. And if there's anything we can do to help out on that whole thing, by all means, reach out to me anytime. That was after the first episode, and we're 23 in. We've heard from people around the country, out of the country even. And so, yeah, sometimes I do wonder, if we're really, spinning our wheels or not. But when we get comments like that, it tells me, hey, man, we're on the right path. Because as we say in the opening to this show that Dean put together, which I just love, by the way, it's such a professional opening, and the graphics and all you did, Dean, with that. I just love it. As we say in there, if we can help even one person with what we're doing on this show and the things we talk about, then it's all worth it to me. And so, with all that said, let me do a little recap of this show, and why we're even here, what we're doing, what we're talking about. And again, being episode 23, y'all, if this is your first time with us watching the Dare Me podcast, I highly encourage you to go back and maybe check out some of the other ones if you enjoy what we're doing. And certainly, if you're a person struggling with addiction, and maybe you just came across our podcast because you were searching for some things like I was when I got hooked on those opiate pain medication pills and all. I was Googling, looking for ways to kick, ways to get through opiate withdrawals. I was searching on YouTube, and I came across a lot of stuff. There's some good stuff out there, but as I always say on this show, I'd never found anything like what we're doing. What we're doing is different with this podcast. Like we talked about already, it's live. People can interact with us live. I will say we get most of our views and viewers and listeners from the recorded versions, which are posted. After we go live and all. But when I was able to get clean, like I said, it's been almost it'll be 2.5 years on September 11th since I put an opiate in his body, or any drug, mind or mood altering chemical for that matter. Thank God I was able to somehow miraculously pull myself through that madness, because a lot of people don't, as we're gonna see shortly on this program today, because we've got a couple videos from that summit I attended, y'all, that fentanyl awareness summit I mentioned. That, man, they're so sad to watch. Kind of the faces of fentanyl kind of thing. You're going to see posters of all these young people that died, but we'll get to that shortly. So, anyways, yeah, y'all, while I was kicking and getting clean, this idea of doing this podcast came to me, and so I decided to do it. It was in the planning stages for a long time, and when we kicked it off, I didn't quite feel like we had all the pieces in place, but there's a friend of mine. He's kind of a buddy now. His name's Marlon. He goes by the stage name Anonymous. Some of y'all may know some of his music. He's been a producer for an artist I promote a lot on this show named Kasky. But anyway, Mass, he posted something and talked about something actually at the summit I went to, where he said, and he probably picked this up somewhere along the way too. I just had never heard it before, that perfectionism is a form of procrastination. And that's what I found I was doing with this podcast, because we literally took almost a year to kick this thing off. And I was just trying to get all the pieces in place and make sure everything was perfect before we did. And let's face it, y'all, there is no perfect show, and so we had enough pieces in place to get it started, and so we did. And we still have gremlins in the system that pop up every time. They very well may be on this edition of the show. Who the hell knows? Sometimes I do feel like we're flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. And one of the thrills, I guess, too, about going live, but I will say we've done some episodes of this show that I'm actually very proud of. I'm proud of them all. I think they're all pretty good. I always go back and watch them. Sometimes the night after, sometime during the week, I'll go back and watch them one time just to kind of, evaluate and critique what we're doing. Gives me ideas. I didn't like the way we did that, or I like the way we did that. We'll do that again. And so, yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. I think we've done a pretty good job. Certainly, some shows more than others. There's no question about that. And I think we're getting better as we're going. And so certainly the intention is to continue the show. When I started this program, I had put out there and kind of made a commitment even to myself that we do it for a year, and then just kind of gauge where we're at with it, and see if we really do feel like we're making a difference and how much work it turns into and all that. So anyway, let me talk again a little bit about the purpose of the show. I kind of alluded to it a little bit, been dancing around it here today. I got hooked on the opiate pain medication, and I've had a long struggle with addiction my whole life. I started partying as a kid, a teenager in the 70s, and God damn, it just seemed like everybody partied and got high, when I was a younger man, drinking, smoking weed, and then all the other bullshit that would come along the way. And, that went on for years, man. By the time I was 13 years old, I was getting high on a daily basis. And that went on until I was almost 25, which was in the 80s. And that's when the cocaine hit. And, man, I got caught up in the whole cocaine craze for a couple of years. And I crashed and burned, and I ended up, in a hospital in a drug treatment program, and it's a long story there. But I stayed clean for 16 years and 9 months. Ta-da! Almost 17 years I stayed fucking clean, y'all. And that's where I really built my life for myself. Man, I think back now. It was a trip that, as young as like 25 years old, I had already like given up on achieving some of the dreams I had at such a young age. And I can still remember it like it was yesterday. I'm fucking 61 years old now, but it just still seems like yesterday. And man, after getting involved in groups like NA, Narcotics Anonymous, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, different recovery groups, and I always like to put it out there just because, I'm an NA guy, but I ain't no fucking representative of the programs for, people who are 12-step program purists, I just want to say that, I am no representative. I'm just another member, another guy trying to stay clean, you know what I mean? And I am not a representative, but I goddamn sure talk about them. And I believe they need to be talked about, from a PR perspective. If we don't talk about these 12-step programs that are out there, how the fuck are people going to know about them? I mean, most people that are in my age group have heard about them at one point or another, but young people, they don't necessarily know about them. And a lot of the people that are hooked on these opiate medications or, addicted to any kind of drug don't necessarily know about them. So, yeah, we talk about them a lot on this show. In fact, we did a whole episode, 12-step programs and opiate withdrawals. So like I said, if you like our content, and maybe this is the first time you've watched the Dare Me podcast, you can go back and look through all the topics of the previous 22 episodes. We're out there on many, many platforms. My personal favorite is the Dare Me podcast YouTube channel. I do kind of oversee that one. I'm a little bit behind on posting the last couple episodes, but I'm going to try to get them done here real soon. But nonetheless, you can go to the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel. Just search it in YouTube. Boom, it'll come up. All the episodes are there. You click on the video tab, and you'll see them all there in chronological order. Try to keep that page uncluttered. There's some reels on there that we do for promos. But nonetheless, yeah, like I said, when I was trying to get clean this time around, that's it. Because after that 17 years I had, or almost 17 years, I had a horrible relapse. I picked up the bottle again. And, I'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into why I relapsed on a future show because people will ask me all the time, like, God damn, man, how could you relapse after having that much time? And I wish it was a simple answer. It's not. There was a lot to the reason why. And nonetheless, I started drinking again, and I got hooked on the fucking booze. Oh my God, that was during the era when the Jaeger bombs just really became a thing, and the Stoli bombs and all that shit. And man, that's it. There's an old saying. People who know that's called like cracking a can because most people go out drinking or even drinking at home, and by 2 in the morning you pass out. But if you're drinking fucking Red Bull with the booze all night, 2, 3, 4 cans of Red Bull, they start adding up when you're doing all them bombs, man. You can't fucking go to sleep at the end of the night. You're up for a couple of few days, and so. Anyhow, man, it did start off horrible. It never does seem to start off out of control, but eventually it gets there. And that's what happened to me that last year, man. It was horrible. Oh my God, do I got war stories. So anyway, I ended up back in a fucking rehab center. I flew all the way from Orlando back up to Detroit. I always joke around. Man, most people leave Detroit or leave Detroit to get clean, and I fucking go back to Detroit to get clean. Mark, hi, Mark. Mark just chimed in the chat. Welcome, bro. And I did get your message, man, but you always try to call me like 20 minutes before the podcast on Sundays, bro. I can't talk to anybody then. I'm like up to my elbows. But I'll try to call you after the show. A friend of mine, Mark from Orlando, just chimed in the chat, and he's joking, but quite serious. There's a photo, and you know what, Mark? I'm going to try to find that photo, and I'll put it on the show one day. I used to have a Pomeranian. May she rest in peace. A lot of my NA friends from Orlando remember Shady, because we used to have some hell of a parties at the house. I'm talking like we'd have over 100 people there. Hey, Phil is in the chat. He says, "What's up? Welcome to the show, Phil. Glad you're here with us, bro." But anyway, during that relapse, man, I don't even know how the hell I ended up with this photo, but it was kind of a morning after photo of all these cans of Red Bull and fifths of Jaeger in this overflowed trash can, and beer bottles or beer cans or whatever, and there's a picture of like a beer and a Red Bull can in my dog's food dish, which was next to the trash can. Just crazy shit like that. So anyway, thanks for the reminder, Mark, that I damn sure don't ever want to fucking live like that anymore. I'm gonna find that picture. It's around somewhere. You know, you gotta try to have a sense of humor about some of that shit. It really wasn't funny, when I think back about it, but yeah, that's what Mark means by poor Shade's food bowl. She was one cool little dog. Man, totally different personality than the one I got now. My little running buddy Jazzy, who I've had for about 8 years. But Shades was a great dog. Anyway, so I went to treatment in Brighton, which is one of the oldest drug and alcohol treatments. I always say drug and alcohol when, I was reminded over the weekend alcohol is a fucking drug. And somebody I heard speak just yesterday said, when we separate the two and we say drugs and alcohol, that's the same thing basically as saying drugs and cocaine or drugs and heroin. Alcohol's a fucking drug. It's just one of those socially accepted drugs. And so I've been trying to get out of the habit of saying that. But it's just kind of one of them things from habit, I guess. So anyway, Brighton is one of the oldest substance abuse, is maybe a better way to put it, treatment centers in the country. And I took a trip there. In fact, I sometimes will say that boy Marshall Mathers, Eminem, he talks about how he went through treatment there. A lot of famous people went through there. And I was just fortunate at the time that the health insurance I had covered me going into Brighton. And so I did. I spent like a month there, and that was a good stay for me, man. I will say, I'm not trying to endorse one place over another. Certainly, we don't get any, financial support from Brighton or anything, but they're the real deal, y'all. Because there's some shady ones out there, which we're going to talk about it a little bit near the end of this program today. But they're the real deal. And when I got out of there, that was a good stay for me. I really did some work on myself. I learned a lot of things and stayed clean for another 6 years when I got out of there. And then I broke my fucking ankle at an NA roller skating party, no less, that I had no business at with my old ass. But hey, man, I used to skate when I was younger. Fuck, I played hockey for a couple years. I was into the whole roller disco thing. You remember Pete, right? If you're still watching, bro, when we used to go to Skateland and all that shit or whatever. But anyhow, it was an adult night kind of thing, and it was a group of NA friends of mine going. They were like, "Come on, Glenn, man, you have a good time." And I thought, yeah, you got it, bro. Skateland. Pete just chimed in the chat there. Yeah. And so anyway, I went. And I actually had a great night, man. It all came back to me within a half hour. I was skating backwards, doing the whole thing, and all I had to do was step off of that skating rink at the end of the night, and you go from that real smooth, slick, fast surface to carpeting. And man, I lost my balance, and my whole body was literally up in the air. And I remember coming down you're just like trying to grab onto anything in midair. And somehow my right leg got twisted underneath me, and I came down hard on it. And man, I can still remember I heard it, when I came down on it. It was like, and when people say they break their ankle, it's not like you break it in half or anything, but there's a lot of bones in the ankle, and the main one that connects like the femur to the ankle broke off, and a couple others. And so, anyway, you probably have already figured out where I'm going with this if you haven't heard my story before. The next morning, I was in surgery and they put 3 pins in my ankle and then discharged me. And as I often say, on the way out the door, tossed me a bottle of Vicodins and said, "Here, Glenn, these are for the pain." And man, I shouldn't have taken them, but I did. I should have known better. With my history with addiction, taking any kind of narcotics, I should have spoke up and said, "Hey, y'all, I'm a drug addict. I'm in recovery. I've been clean X number of years. Is there something else?" And I didn't speak up. And I never fucked with opiates before. Like I said, man, I was a drinker and a pot smoker and a cokehead from back in the day and all that. And I did all kinds of other shit, ecstasy and, mescaline, tripping on acid, all that stupid shit. I didn't do it on a regular basis, but all that stuff came along from time to time. I definitely did my share of experimenting, like a lot of people like myself did, and never messed with opiates. I get it, especially in programs like NA. The sickness of addiction, is described as a physical, mental, and spiritual sickness, and that the drugs are just a symptom of it. Uh, and I believe that. I'll also say that it ain't true that a drug is a drug is a drug, at least not for this dope fiend and drug addict. There are differences. Holy shit, are there differences. I'll tell you what, coming off of them opiates, kicking opiates was the worst thing I ever have been through in my entire life. And even like I talked about, kicking booze, I was in Brighton. They gave me meds. I get phenobarbital. The withdrawal symptoms were like, nothing really. Putting pot down, cocaine, to me, that's more of a mental thing. Them opiate withdrawals are fucking horrible. If you're a person that's going through it and you came across our podcast and you're watching live right now, or maybe the recorded version down the road, and you're looking for a way out, I will promise you that if I can do it, you can do it. But I get it. The withdrawal symptoms are horrible. You get the cold sweats. They call it restless leg syndrome. They ought to call it restless limb syndrome, because even your fucking arms go flapping. You'll just be laying there trying to go through it, and all of a sudden your arm just, a lot of it, I think the intensity of the withdrawal symptoms depends a lot on how long you were doing opiates for, how much you were doing on a daily basis. For myself, it was a long road, y'all. When I started taking them things after I broke my ankle, that turned into a 9-year addiction. 9 years. And at the end of it, I was snorting heroin. Uh, yeah, it started off with the Vicodins. And then next thing you know, I was taking Percocets, then I was taking Oxys, and I was taking Demerol, then Dilaudid. And, you develop these connections, the drug dealers, the plugs, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes they could even be close associates, who are hooked on the shit too. And you trade back and forth with them. Hey, man, I get my script, because, I even had a script. I was getting shit off the streets at the end of it, but my script was supposed to last me a month. I'd burn through them in fucking 5 days, man. That's what happens when you build up a tolerance to that shit, because you do. It starts off real fine and dandy, but if you keep taking them, you will build up a tolerance to them. That's just facts. And if you keep taking them, you have to take more and more and more to get the same effect. And eventually, you got to take them just to feel normal because you will get dope sick. And I just barely scratched the surface talking about some of those withdrawal symptoms. Like I said, the cold sweats, the restless arm and leg syndrome. You feel like you have this hamster running on a wheel in your chest. You feel like you're literally crawling out of your skin, like there's things crawling on you. Man, if you're going through withdrawals and trying to kick, you can't eat, you can't sleep. Oh, the insomnia is like torture. You're puking, you're shitting. You get the idea, y'all. I don't, it's awful. It is awful. I don't talk a lot about this on the show, but I also am a cancer survivor, y'all. I've been cancer free now for over 6 years, but I had bladder cancer, which incidentally, the doctor and the surgeon told me flat out, because the first thing I could think of when they told me I had cancer, I think this is true for a lot of people, is like, well, how the fuck did I get that? And it's like, yeah, right. Like I knew. And he didn't even say anything to me at first. He just went like this. And then he went like this, smoking and drinking. I brought that shit on myself, man. Fucking crazy. Point I'm making is being a cancer survivor, thank God I didn't have to go through radiation treatment like a lot of people do. I did go through 6 months of chemo. And, I've had checkups annually since then, CT, stuff like that. Again, knock on wood, thank God it was 6 years last April that I had the surgery and then again the treatments after. The only reason I bring that up, y'all, is because what I'm saying is true. I'm not fucking making this up. Going through the opiate withdrawals was worse than that. It was fucking the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. The way I feel today, I will never, ever, I hope, put another opiate in this body unless I am in such excruciating pain that I just can't fucking take it no more, like on my deathbed. I just won't. And I also want to say, this program, I'm not trying to come after anybody who legit takes pain medication and takes them as prescribed and, says that, it's working for them and the best thing that's ever happened to them or whatever. Hey, do you, as I often like to say. That truly is kind of like my favorite saying and has been for the past couple of years, do you? If you are someone looking to try to get off of them things, though, and get out of it, I'm hoping that maybe me sharing my experience and talking about the things we do on this program might be an inspiration to you or someone looking for, some help or a way out. Because, again, I'll say it, man, if I can fucking do it, anybody can do it. Yeah, fucking snorting heroin at the end of it because, like I said, man, you get these connections and plugs, whatever you want to call it, and then all of a sudden you run out of the good, as we say. You can't get any pills, and they'll say, well, Glenn, I don't have anything, but I got fucking heroin. It'll hold you over until we get some more pills, so you're not dope sick. Never in a million fucking years would I have thought a guy like me would start snorting heroin at my age, because I only been clean about 2.5 years, and I didn't start with the heroin until about the last year of the addiction. So, you do the math, like 57, 58 years old, and I start snorting heroin for the first time. What the fuck? And as I often say, y'all, I'm a pretty smart guy when I got my head on straight. I like to think so. I'm an educated man. I worked in corporate America for 30 years. You can't just be any old fucking idiot and do some of the things I was able to accomplish somehow. But I did because the withdrawals are horrible. Being dope sick, coming off of opiates is horrible. And again, I'll say, it's different for everybody. I think a lot of it depends on how long you were doing opiates, became physically dependent and or addicted. Some people seem to think there's a difference between the two. Not in my mind. If you're physically dependent, you're fucking addicted as far as I'm concerned. But again, hey man, do you, there are those people that, you know, swear that they take them as prescribed. They know they're not. They know they're physically dependent, but they don't do anything, that would be considered, what shall I say, inappropriate behavior. They don't, take them any way other than prescribed. And so for folks like that, again, if it works for you, do you. For me, unfortunately, it did spin out of control and I crashed and burned at the end of it. And sometimes people ask me, because I don't always go into this, did I go back into treatment into a rehab center or a drug center to get clean off the opiates? And the answer is no. I didn't. I had people trying to encourage me to go back into a treatment center, but I just didn't want to do it. I had been in a few of them over the course of my life, and certainly experienced it outpatient, IOP, intensive outpatient treatment. Counseling, therapists. Fuck, I've been prayed over. You name it, bro. I've done it to try to save my life a few times. But I just didn't want to go back into one of them places. And long story short, I had kind of like a little mini intervention, I call it, done on me by some family members over the phone that called me from, my hometown in Michigan when I was living in Orlando, because I lived there 30 years. And I was very open about my addiction with certain people, certainly not in my professional life, but with different family members. I was like, God damn, man, hooked on these fucking pills and I'm trying to get off of them. I didn't necessarily go into great detail at how bad it had gotten or whatnot, but there were people in my personal life who certainly knew that I was trying like hell to get off of them things. And so anyway, yeah, I did end up staying with a family member in Michigan. One of my sisters, I went and stayed at her place. And as I sometimes say, I kicked in her basement, which is true, actually. It was a nice basement. As far as basements go, I don't want to make it sound like I was in some fucking, dungeon, although I jokingly called it the dungeon sometimes because it's so fucking cold down there. If you know, basements up in Michigan in the winter, they just get cold. But it's like a little apartment down there, and I was quite comfortable, all things considered, for kicking dope, But man, that first week, oh my God, I was climbing the walls, and then I got busy doing what you do. I learned a lot in my stays in drug treatment centers. Mark's laughing. I see you in the chat, bro, because he remembers Mark was actually living with me and my son G at the time I went through all that madness. And he's laughing about the basement, by the way. If my sister T's watching this, T, we love you, but Mark knows that basement. It's fucking cold down there. I really appreciate. We got a shit ton of people participating in the show today, watching, listening, and in the chat. I hope y'all are enjoying. We got some really good other stuff coming up on the show, but I'm kind of going a little bit more into a deep dive of my story today, even with some promos I put out there this past week. That was kind of the theme I put, an intimate conversation with your old pal Glenn this week. Because, like I said out of the gate, we don't have any guests this week. It's just me. And, of course, Dean back in the studio in Orlando. But, Dean's just kind of handling all the stuff behind the scenes for us, keeping on the air. He certainly joins in the conversation from time to time. But this week it's just kind of an intimate, deep dive conversation with me. And again, I appreciate everybody participating in the chat. We'll put the phone number up maybe a little later, and if anybody wants to call in, they can, or not. So anyway, though, y'all, after I went through the worst of the physical withdrawals, I started going to meetings around town. I have a long history with NA. I've been to AA meetings since I was a little kid. It's a long history of addiction slash alcoholism in my family. There's some of these fucking program purists that like to say, well, there's no such thing as that, it's addiction or whatever. Man, whatever, do you, but I have all the respect in the world for Alcoholics Anonymous. I attended plenty of AA meetings and I understand the history of it. And I respect AA's singleness of purpose, focusing on just alcohol. And I also am a huge proponent of harm reduction and MAT, medically assisted treatment. Again, there's some purists that you'll meet and encounter around 12-step programs, and even though I describe myself as an NA guy, and I am, whether I like it or not, for fucking life. I started off with the program, like I said, just shy of 25. I'm 61 now. I've been involved in it for years, y'all. Um, and the whole philosophy of that program is zero mind or mood altering chemicals. So there are some program purists who feel like medically assisted treatment is not really being clean. I say fuck that, man. If we can help somebody get off of opiates by them being on Suboxone or methadone, or like myself, I used kratom to help me with the withdrawal symptoms. Kratom is a controversial thing, just like subs and methadone are. There's some groups out there trying to make kratom illegal, and then there's other groups out there trying to keep it legal. And we did a lot of talking about kratom on previous episodes of the show, and certainly we can talk about it some more. I did my research, though. I did a lot of research on it. That was one of the things I came across when I was looking for ways to kick opiate withdrawals when I was trying to get clean, was kratom. I had never even fucking heard of kratom before. Now you see it everywhere, just driving down the road, all these different vape shops, head shops, whatever, kratom, kratom, kratom. And the short version of what kratom is, it's a plant. It's considered to be in the coffee family. Certainly, it has effects, and the Reader's Digest version is that it kind of sort of tricks our opiate receptors in the brain into thinking we've taken an opiate, even though it's not an opiate. And it just takes a little bit of the edge off of those opiate withdrawals. I read some things that said what I'm about to tell you, and it certainly was the case for me, that it takes about maybe about 70 to 75% of the withdrawal symptoms away. Now, that's subjective. Everybody is different. Every person is different. So don't quote me on that. That's what I read is the average, and certainly was the case for me. Now, for me, I didn't want to fucking switch addictions and go from, being an opiate addict to a kratom head. So I took it with an intent and a full intention of starting at a certain dose and slowly weaning down, which is exactly what I did. And I did that in part because of the research I did and learned that, that's the way to use it properly if you're using it to help you get through an opioid addiction. There's people who just fucking take kratom because they like the effects of it. For me, I couldn't imagine taking that shit on a daily basis. Hey, if that's you, do you, but that wasn't my intent in using kratom. And then I also smoked weed. Even though I was hooked on opiates, I really didn't go back to the pot. Once in a while near the end, I might smoke a little bit, but I was a big pothead when I was younger. And I had smoked it so much that I just didn't even like it anymore. It made me feel like a burnout. It just made me tired, and my fucking thinking was fuzzy. And again, hey, not judging. If you like smoking weed, do you? Do you? It's legal everywhere now. I know in certain states it's legal for recreational use. People use the pens, the vapes, whatever the fuck. I don't care. Do you? For me, I don't like it. Because, it makes my thinking fuzzy and makes me tired. Now, I said I don't like it, but I will say I love smoking weed. Oh my God, I love the smell of it, both when you're smoking it and the smell of it in the bag and the whole process of rolling it up and all that shit. And that weed now, holy fuck, man. Ain't nothing like the weed from back in the day, like my boy Pete, from back when we were in junior high and high school. That shit is so different now. This shit now, man, it's fucking one toke. So yeah, when I was going through the opiate withdrawals, uh, someone close to me brought me some pot. I didn't even ask for it, but it's somebody who knows about going through opiate withdrawals. And yeah, but boy, pizza is cleaning out in the frisbee, man. Remember we used to use the frisbee because you had to clean out all the stems and seeds. Remember that old Cheech and Chong, no stems, no seeds that you don't need. Acapulco Gold is badass weed. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist, y'all. There's an old Cheech and Chong bit where they used to talk about that. But so anyway, yeah, man, you don't have to clean this shit out now. It's like fucking crazy, this pot they got now. So anyway, someone close to me brought me some weed because they knew I was going through the horrible withdrawals at my sister's. And I was told that when they went to the dispensary, this place in Wayne, Michigan, there's a shit ton of them everywhere. And it told them, hey, I know somebody going through opiate withdrawals, and I was wondering, and I was told that the girl didn't even let him finish the sentence, said, oh, I know exactly what you need. And there were two different strains, and I know the names of them, but my memory isn't serving me well now. Stevia, Shebang, you might know if you're still with us, bro. Type it in the chat for me if you will, but I want to call it Seneca. I'm thinking of the philosopher. Anyway, there's two different strains. And so the girl said, well, tell him to smoke this in the morning when he gets up. It'll take a little bit of the edge off the depression because, oh, yeah, by the way, that's another withdrawal symptoms is you go through horrible, horrible fucking depression. Because when you're taking opiates that long, man, you're fucking with your dopamine levels in the head. And you take that shit away, and all of a sudden, oh my God, the depression was horrible. I mean, literally, you feel like you want to fucking die, almost becoming suicidal. And anyway, so they told this person to tell me to smoke that particular strain in the morning. It'll take a little bit of the depression away, which it did. And then it also helped with the appetite because, like I said, I couldn't even fucking eat, man. And then there was another strain for at night, which would help with the insomnia and help me sleep. And it did you know. But the thing of it is, man, is like I learned real fast. Oh fuck, don't smoke too much of that shit because I wasn't used to smoking weed anymore. And man, I fucking took a couple tokes too many, and I started getting a little paranoid and shit. It reminded me of the old days. So I learned real fast, man. And like one toke. Matter of fact, I got one of them little one toke pipes you can buy at the different head shops and dispensaries and just put a little bit in because again I didn't want to switch drugs or addiction from opiates to becoming a kratom head or a pothead. It was all about my intent, and I was only using it to try to help wean me off and get me through the horrible withdrawals. And I'm not endorsing this for anybody. I'm not telling you to do this. If you're watching our show trying to get off opiates, I'm not telling you not to do it. I certainly am no medical expert, nor would I ever claim to be. And I put that disclaimer out there on this show many times, and I'll say it again. I am no medical expert, ain't trying to tell nobody what to do or what not to do. All I can tell you is my experience and what happened with me. And I think both of those things helped me through it tremendously. Um, I'll also say I'm not even quite certain I would have stayed clean and gotten all the way through the withdrawals had them things not been tools I used to help take the edge off because it was horrible. Even before I went back to Michigan, I shared this at a meeting not long ago. This is how fucking insane that shit had me thinking. I would swear to myself that I wasn't going to get any more. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to wean down with these last however many pills I got, 10, 12, whatever. I'll stretch them out and then I'll jump off, and I'll just go through it for a few days or a week and struggle through the withdrawals and get back to my life or whatever. And I said, I fucking played that game with myself over and over so many fucking times. I mean, literally I tried getting off them things for a few years, because I didn't even want to get off them until I finally realized what a fucking problem it was becoming. Because the one thing about them opiate pain medications is they fucking work, especially when you first start taking them. Oh man, do they work. At least for me, I remember telling someone close to me at the time, I've said this on this show many times, that when I started taking them, because like I said, I never fucked with opiates before that, I was like, God damn, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. I've found a new drug, one that I could function on. Because I was literally the proverbial functioning addict. I got up, went to work every day, all that kind of shit. I could, be very productive and everything. And it worked until it didn't anymore, because it does turn on you. Like I've talked about, you build up a tolerance. You got to take more and more and more and more and more. And eventually you got to take it just so you don't get sick, just to even halfway feel normal. But anyway, so kind of going off on a little tangent there, but hey, like I said in the promos for today's show, yeah, a deep, intimate conversation with your old pal Glenn about this shit. It's been a minute, because we've had so many guests on the show, which has been great, and we've gone off on different topics and all, and I just felt like that's why we called this edition of the show Back to Basics. Kind of felt like it was time to get back to the basics of what the whole intention of this show was in the first place and was all about, and what prompted me to even start it. And it truly was a result of me going through that horrible, horrible addiction to opiates that I did. And I'll say this, y'all, I truly feel like I'm living on borrowed time. So many people have died as a result of the opioid crisis. And of course, now with fentanyl, which, really just became the crisis that it is now over the past few years. The opioid epidemic's been around for years, going back over 20 years, the whole oxy thing and the pill mills and all that shit started. But man, fentanyl, which has been around for a long, long time, but just really became, the street crisis that it is for drugs out on the street a few years ago. And we're going to talk about it in depth in just a little bit. Everything going on with the fentanyl thing. But, anyways, y'all, I just wanted to kind of, revisit what the whole purpose of me even starting this podcast was. And so we came up with the name Dare Me. I say I came up with the name Dare Me. I wasn't sure what the hell we were going to call this thing. Once I knew I was going to do the podcast, because I ran it by some people, I remember I ran it by, I have some people very close to me. I said, what do you think about me doing something like this? And, I had a couple people say, "Oh my God, Glenn, that's right up your alley, man. It's, perfect for you. You love to talk, and I know I'm a talker, y'all. I can fucking run my mouth." I was telling my daughter the other day, we were driving. I said, "Man, they got people who are type A personalities and type B personalities. I've always said I'm a triple A. I'm like the fucking Energizer Bunny. I just keep going and going and going." And so, yeah, I'm a talker. Um, and so I had people tell me, "Yeah, that's a perfect outlet for you, And so, where I'm going with this whole thing is it took a lot for me to put myself out there like this. I remember I even ran it by both of my kids, and I told them both, "Hey, man, if this makes you uncomfortable, me doing this and putting myself out there and, talking openly about addiction and the struggles I had, I won't do it, And, I got no pushback at all. You know, it was like, hey man, do you, do you. And I remember even my boy G saying, Dad, as we use in the promo to the show, if you talking about this so openly helps even one person, then it's all worth it. And so I took that, little line he said and ran with it. And like I said, we use it in the promo for the show. So yeah, man, it took a little balls for me to put myself out there like this because, like I said, I didn't broadcast the fact that I was an addict and had struggled with addiction most of my life in my professional life, and I worked for, a pretty conservative company in Orlando for 25 years. In fact, it was like a DUI school with, alcohol and evaluators and drug evaluators on staff and shit. And so, I don't think it would ever really been an issue. There were a couple of people I had confided in there that kind of sort of knew. They didn't know the whole, length and depth and breadth of it all, but they certainly knew I didn't drink or anything like that all the years, most of the years that I worked there. And then, of course, I also worked in the media. Had a pretty high profile position, working on television, on radio, as a public relations guy for this company I worked for. So, kind of had made a little bit of a name for myself, so to speak, and so I kind of played it close to the chest that I was in recovery and that I had struggled with addiction most of my life, and then, of course, like I said, I stayed clean for a long time, almost 17 years. And sometimes, I always was involved in the recovery community, but sometimes you just kind of get on with your life, And so, uh, what's Mark typing in here? Let's start the plane by banging on the star. Mark, he just wrote something in the chat room. I'm going to get off topic just for a minute. Yeah, one of the things I used to do is I was a traffic reporter in Orlando. And by the way, oh my God, I got to talk about something having to do with that in a second. But for the 20 years I worked for Metro Traffic Control, and there was another company, Traffic Pulse, I worked with too. Anyway, I was an airborne traffic reporter for part of the time I worked there for several years, and I would take people on joyrides. We flew in this 172 Cessna, a little four-seater. It's kind of like a fucking crop duster, if you know what a Cessna is. So anyway, my buddy Mark wanted to go for a joyride once, and we took him up, but we got to the airport, and the fucking plane wouldn't start. And so, literally, just like for some people who know, with cars back in the old days, if your car wouldn't start, you get underneath and bang on the starter with a hammer or a brick just to kind of rattle some shit loose and it would start. And we did that on the plane and it fucking started. And I'm like, oh, it's all good, Mark. Come on, let's go. He was like, are you fucking kidding me? You just banged on the starter and you expect me to get in this thing? He's laughing in the chat. So, yeah, you remember that story, eh? But, shit like that happened from time to time. But anyway, so back to where I was. Thanks for that reminder, Mark. That was a funny story. So anyway, y'all, though, the point I was making is in my professional life, I did kind of play it close to the chest. And Pete says, like the old Vega. Oh my God, I remember going. I'm going to get off topic again here. I remember leaving a party at your house, Pete, where, man, I should not have been driving that car, first of all, in the condition I was probably in at the time, and certainly because it didn't have very good brakes at the time. And we decided to make a midnight run to the Burger King, and, man, ended up crashing that car into some field. And, oh, my God, I remember we opened the doors. We had to force the doors open. And we were sitting in a couple feet of water. There was a guy in the car. I can't remember his name. He had a warrant out. He had to go run away. Oh man, you guys are reminding me of some old stories. Mark says good times clean because you know what, Mark? That's right. That was a good time clean. Wasn't using then when we took that joyride in the plane. But I definitely was into that old story of the Vega there, Pete. But anyway, y'all. So moving along, like I said, I just kind of never broadcasted the fact that I was involved in the recovery community and that I was an addict in my professional life. Certainly, I still attended meetings. I was very involved in the recovery community. People all knew me in that community. And I DJ'd at this club we had that was a drug and alcohol free. Like a coffee house slash nightclub called Club Soda, that I kind of invested a little money in, and I was the DJ there for God. We had that place for I think about 6, 7 years. We bopped around to a few different locations, so people kind of knew I was involved in that whole community. I guess is the point I'm making. But certainly there were people in my professional life, like bosses I had, that I just played it close to the chest who had no idea. So I guess where I'm going with that is, put myself out there on this podcast. Definitely took some balls, and I can guarantee there were some who, when they heard, have watched, it was probably kind of like, well, 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 what do we have here? But hey, it's all good, because I've actually, like I said, gotten some really great feedback. Oh my God, all the DMs and the voicemails and the actual telephone calls that I was able to take, and text messages, and comments, and people who've chimed in on the show. Just first of all, congratulating me for being able to get and stay clean, and I don't put it out there, as we say around the program, I don't put it out there for the applause. I do put it out there for the cause. I'm just trying to stay clean one more day like anybody else, man. It's just a daily reprieve for those of us that know. But nonetheless, that's kind of where I was going with the whole thing, is the name Dare Me. Why did we call the show Dare Me? Because it was like, fucking dare me to put myself out there like this. I had to get away from the whole ego thing of, oh my God, what are people from my professional life going to think? My old bosses or my old coworkers. Fuck that. I don't give a fuck. God bless all of them. I don't wish them any ill will. I really don't give a fuck what they think about it. There's an old saying I was taught that some of y'all may know. What other people think of me is none of my fucking business. And I don't care who that is, by the way. That could be a former coworker, colleague, boss, family member for that matter. It doesn't matter what other people think of me. As long as I'm comfortable in my own skin and I have peace in my life, that's what really matters, at least for me. And I think that's the case really for anybody. It took me a little while to get there to really fully understand that, but I think I do now. And so, with all that said, I did kind of say to myself, yeah, fucking dare me, and I did it. And I will tell y'all, no regrets, no regrets. Like I talked about even today, the comment that my friend Pete sent me, who's I guess still with us. Pete, thank you so much for sending me that DM saying that, you think what we're doing here and what I'm doing with the show is sending out a positive message. And that just means the world to me, that hopefully what we're doing is making a little bit of a difference. So then, anyway, we took the name Dare Me and kind of played with the letters in it and created these hashtags. And Dean, if you're not asleep at the wheel, I know I've been running my mouth for it. Yeah, there he is. Thank you, Dean. He's there. We created these hashtags using the letters in the name Dare Me, and these are the topics that we focus on with this program. All certainly my favorite things to talk about: drugs, addiction, recovery, which certainly we've talked a lot about on this show already, and enlightenment, music, and exercise. And so, enlightenment, I touched on it just a little bit. They say this sickness of addiction. Is physical, which I don't think any of us can deny. Fuck it, it destroys your physical health. Mental, and I don't think any of us can deny that. Certainly fucks your thinking all up, and you make horrible, horrible choices. And then it's spiritual as well. That starts to fuck with people. Oh God, here they come, the holy rollers. They're all going to start praying over me and the Jesus people and all this other stuff, And that frightens some people away from the 12-step programs or the recovery community. Some people have no problem with it, Maybe they've had God or religion in their life all along, and appreciate that that's part of it. For some people, and that certainly was the case for myself when I was a younger man, that shit kind of turned me off. And so I just thought it was a good topic to have on this show where we talk about enlightenment, spirituality. And I like the word enlightenment because it's not like we're trying to cram that word God down anybody's throat. I would never do that or allow us to go in that direction with this podcast. We just talk about enlightenment because that's one of the things that has helped me tremendously getting involved in things like yoga and meditation and being open minded to whatever other people believe in, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, which has been so instrumental in my life. I'm going to do a whole episode talking about Shiva and Hinduism and how that's become such a big part of my life. You name it, Allah, I don't give a fuck. Whatever God you want to, try to have a connection with or pray to or whatever the fuck, the universe. We had people on the show. We did a whole episode just on the topic of enlightenment, by the way. If you're just watching the show for the first time, we had 3 guests on one program all sharing their different opinions on enlightenment. And one of the guys actually is a self described atheist. And we talked with him at length about, wow, man, how are you able to incorporate 12-step programs which talk about incorporating a higher power of some type into your life, a God, if you will, if you're an atheist? And man, did he shed some great information on that show. Shout out to my boy Steve Lawrence if you're watching, man. Hope to have you back on the show again one day. And then we had this girl, Melissa Dawn, who is like a life coach, by the way. I highly encourage you looking her up. She's in my social media. But she talked about, for her, it's basically the universe, man, the universe, and we're learning so much more all the time about, the universe with this Webb telescope and fucking nebulas and black holes. And not to get too deep and flowery, y'all, but man, that shit is fucking real, We get so caught up in the rat race of our daily lives and ripping and running and getting paid and material shit and all that. And sometimes we forget, man, that, hey, we're all just here for a short time in this crazy fucking world and universe. We're just a little grain of sand in the desert, a little drop of water in the ocean. And so, yeah, I love talking about enlightenment, and it helps bring me peace. And that's so important when it comes to drug addiction and recovery because I've learned that for me, if I don't have peace in my life, I can get a case of what we call the fuck-its. And if I get a case of the fuck-its, I might just say, fuck it, get me a beer. And if I have a beer, I'm going to want to smoke a doob. And if I smoke, you get the idea. And next thing you know, I'm doing pills and coke and every fucking other thing. So for me, it's all about protecting my peace. And one of the ways I do that is by trying to practice some kind of enlightenment, spirituality in my life through meditation. Like I said, yoga's a big thing for me. I'm not a big church guy, and I'm certainly not a member of any specific religion. Not that I have anything against that for people who are involved with religion that may work in their life. Good for you if you practice what you preach, and if that's working for you and bringing you peace, do you. More power to you. I'm just sharing for me, where I'm at with the whole thing. But it is something I like to talk about on this show and try to expand my horizons with. I love hearing other people's perspectives when it comes to enlightenment and spirituality. And then music. Oh, my God. What a lifesaver that's been for me, I've been a music guy my whole life, and I get it, man. Everybody fucking loves music, Who doesn't love music, I'll also say for me, it's kind of been like at an obsessive, like a true addict fashion thing for me my whole life. I made a living playing music for most of my life. Whether it was, on the radio as a DJ. I've worked in more bars and clubs as a DJ than I could possibly remember. I've had a couple of different mobile DJ businesses. I'm not the best musician. Owned several guitars in my life. I can play basic chords. Right now, I'm still practicing with just my uke, but hey, it is what it is. My new thing with music has been auto tune and actually singing for the last couple of years, and working on music production with that boy Shebang. I don't know if he's still with us in the chat. He's been a guest on the show many times. Young guy who I met in the program, and man, we just formed a really cool and unique friendship. And actually, I got a song I still got to release. I did a cover of a Caskey song that is kind of all about addiction. And for me, it just hit so hard when he dropped that song because I was in a full blown relapse at the time. And there were just really some bizarre things going on in my life where the lyrics just hit home. It's so fucking bizarre. I'm really big on lyrics when it comes to music. We, of course, make them our own and apply them to our own life. And that song just fucking blew my mind. And it's called Learning to Breathe, kind of out of Caskey's bailiwick, if you will, because he's known as a rapper, and that was a total acoustic, bluesy, real ghosty song that he did. But I fucking loved it, and I always wanted to fucking cover it. And so my boy Shebang was here visiting, and we got here in the studio, and man, we did. And so anyway, I sent it to that boy Anonymous, one of Caskey's producers, and he sent it to Cass. He told me he sent it to him immediately, and I would have sent it right to Caskey, but he gets bombarded with messages and shit, I'm quite sure. But me and this guy Marlon, he goes by Anonymous, we communicate from time to time, and he always responds to me right away whenever I send him a message. So he sent it to Caskey, and we have this little chat group from this music summit thing that they put on that I went to, and I told them I think I'm going to post it in there so all the guys can see the progress I've made, since I started singing and doing auto tune and music production a couple of years ago. So, anyway, though, I'm getting a little off topic. The whole thing with the music is it is truly been a lifesaver for me because, man, when I got clean this time, I totally reinvented myself. My past life is just that. It's past. It's over. I remember telling my sister when I was trying to kick and get clean, saying, you know what? I just want my fucking life back. I just want my life back. And then after I started staying clean for a while, I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that fucking life. Fuck that life. I'm done. I'm over. I retired. And I thought to myself, yeah, I was productive. I was truly the functioning addict. But then I thought to myself, what the fuck was going on in my head that made me think it was okay to even start taking them fucking pills in the first place, let alone what happened to me once I was hooked on them all that time. So I thought, man, I don't want nothing to do with that fucking life. It's over. It's done. Time for me to reinvent myself. In fact, on one of my social media, I got to say, and I loved it, says, man, I'm trying to remember how it says, we are not required to even be the person we were 5 minutes ago. We can change our life any fucking time we want to. And that's what I did. I just, that's part of who I am and always will be. It's part of my history. But I truly did reinvent myself, man. And so one of the things I did in reinventing myself was starting this different journey with music that I have. Excuse me. And I needed something. Uh, to develop a passion for. There's that old thing saying the parable of the empty mind. When you take negative shit away, you better put something positive back in there pretty fucking quick, or that negative shit's going to find its way back in there real soon. And so, yeah, man, I pulled all the dope out. I made all them changes. And one of the positive things that I truly do have a passion for and just always have an obsessive passion is music. And this new journey that I've been on, for a while there, I was on a commitment of recording a song a day. just to get in and start playing with it. And I use Logic Pro is the name of the software I use for, producing the music and auto tuning it and stuff. And I've done some pretty weird and bizarre stuff in there because you can play with all these different special effects and plugins and all that kind of stuff. But it's just been so much fun, and it truly has helped save my life. And with this podcast, we've had some great guests on the show. Shout out to my boy Dustin Warbear. Dustin, if you see this episode, I hope everything's going good with you, bro. Hope to come to one of your shows soon. He's based in Wisconsin. And I met him in Orlando at that Future of Artists Music Summit that I've talked about on the show many times that I went to in Orlando that Kasky and Anonymous put on. That was a great show, and I met Dustin there. And he actually developed our logo for the program. He does graphic design and stuff. And so really appreciate what he did with that. And we had that boy Mike Woods, an old friend of mine who is a rocker, man. We had him on the show a little while back. And man, we played some clips from some of his songs. Shout out, Mike, if you happen to see or watch this. Of course, we've had that boy Shebang on here talking about his music. I could go on. And so more to come. In fact, I talk about Kasky a lot. And at one point, him and I had talked, and we were having these conference calls after the summit. And, I told him at that time I hadn't even started the podcast that I was planning on doing it. And he agreed to be a guest on the show. So I just haven't reached out and asked him yet. But, it's probably about time. I was just trying to tweak everything, flush it out, and make sure he's in his comfort zone coming on a show that he feels comfortable with, which, I'm sure he'd be fine with it. Probably just a matter of tying him down now at this point, though. He's so fucking busy, man. I follow him on social media, and he's just been out touring with, doing shows with Yellow Wolf and just traveling all around. So hopefully we'll have him on the show here soon, y'all. That is a goal of mine. And then that last hashtag that we had, is the word exercise, because the drug addiction, it truly is a physical sickness. And we've talked a lot about fitness and exercise on this program. I'm so blessed to have a son who is a fitness enthusiast, as he likes to say. My son Glenn really helped coach me back to health, y'all. And we've had him as a guest on the show a couple of times. And we talk a lot about fitness and staying in good shape and all that. So anyway, that truly was a deep dive into the whole purpose of this show, my history with addiction, why I decided to start this podcast because of what happened to me with the opiate medications and how that got out of hand for me and literally almost killed me. Believe me, y'all, I have war stories, some of which I've told on this show, some that I haven't yet, but I will eventually. And so I truly do, like I said earlier, feel like I'm living on borrowed time and just trying to, do something positive. One of my favorite books, y'all, is one that you may be familiar with, and it's called The Power of Positive Thinking. And it was written by this dude who's no longer with us. He's passed away now, by the name of Norman Vincent Peale. And, it ain't for everybody. He definitely dresses it up a lot with the whole God thing and the Jesus thing and all that, which is fine, It also is a very, very positive message in the book. If that kind of stuff turns you off, the whole God thing, you just learn to meander your way through it. But it's one of the most read books ever in the history of the world, around the world. And so, yeah, I read it. I actually listened to the audio tapes because he had this voice that was kind of fun to listen to. Kind of almost like a little bit of a preachy voice, Nonetheless, though, where I was going with that is one of the messages I've always remembered from The Power of Positive Thinking in Norman Vincent Peale is he would say the key to happiness in this life is to live a purposeful life. Might take you a minute to figure out what that purpose is, but once you decide, or sometimes it chooses you, which is kind of how I feel with this whole recover out loud thing. It's like, man, I'm not even so sure I decided this. It's almost like it fucking chose me. But this is kind of my purpose now. I do other stuff in my life and with my life, certainly. But this has become my main purpose is, I'm living a bit of a purposeful life right now. And I do have peace, as I talked about. I have shitty days just like anybody else. Fuck this, fuck that, whatever. But for the most part, I'm a pretty happy guy. I have peace in my life, and I do feel like I'm living a purposeful life. And I guess where I'm going with that is that was another reason why I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and do this podcast, even after I'm long dead and gone, which hopefully is still a little ways off. But with the internet and everything else, this fucking show may live on forever. God only knows how long it'll last and be out there. So it does kind of give me a good feeling knowing that we're putting what I really believe is good positive message and information out there that could potentially live on forever and help people that may not even be born yet. Who the fuck knows? So, anyways, with all that said, y'all. That's a recap of why I started this show, my history, touched on a lot of different stuff. Dean, you still with me there, bro? I know I went into a deep dive that time. I can see Dean down below. There he is. All right. Well, hey, Dean, let's go ahead and kind of transition now. And I have all those slides that I sent you today. And I'd like to talk a little bit, if you want to bring them up. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about this event. This is a current event, y'all. On this show, we do talk about, opiates in the news and current events and do a couple shout outs, which we've already done on this show. But anyway, Jesus, what was it? I think last Thursday it was that I went to this thing. Might have been Wednesday. I can't remember. Anyway, it was the 17th. And I knew this event was coming up because, it certainly was promoted on social media and the news around town. And it was called, as you can see, the Sacramento County Fentanyl Awareness and Action Summit. And it took place over at Sac State, which is not far from where I live. And, during the morning rush, it was about a 20-minute drive. And I went to this event, and I was truly blown away, y'all. They did an outstanding job on putting this thing together, as you're going to see in a little bit here. And this ain't my first rodeo with going to events like this. When I lived in Orlando all those years, during the years I stayed clean, I volunteered with a group called the Orange County Coalition for a Drug-Free Community, and I was on the media committee, and I got involved with a lot of the events they did. And they did and still do a great job. But the point I'm making is I've been to a lot of these events before, so I was kind of wondering how this was going to go, and they blew it out of the water, y'all. They had a lineup of speakers, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute, some people I met, and they kept it. Man, for as packed as the agenda was and the amount of speakers they had, they kept it right on time. Props and big props to the moderator. I can't remember her name, but man, I've moderated events like this in the past, and it ain't no easy task, y'all. It's not as easy as you might think, because you really do got to keep it on track and keep it rolling, or it can get off schedule real fast. But whoever that girl was, she did an outstanding job. So anyway, let's move to the next photo. This was also a little promo they did for the thing ahead of time. The famous Tower Bridge right there in the pic in downtown Sacramento, and they had a little barcode you could use to register. You get the idea. I was a promo. This was at the actual event. I just took a pic on my phone of the big PowerPoint. They had a big screen on each side. There was definitely, I'd say, over 1,000 people there. And in fact, I guess, Dean, this might be a good time to show that first video if you got it ready of the crowd there, just to give our viewers and listeners an idea of how many people were there. You got that one handy?
That would be
the
video
first
one,
one.
Fentanyl Summit.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Mixed with other drugs. So because it's manufactured, we see fentanyl mixed with heroin, methamphetamines, cocaine, and this is where you have people who are using other drugs who are now exposed to fentanyl that they were not ready for. Those which you can see is the pictures. You'll see those over here, the blue M30 pills. We've had those in Sacramento for several years. They're all fentanyl. At this point, most people know that they are fentanyl. There was a moment several years ago.
So, yeah, there you go, y'all. And when I started recording that, I had no idea what she was going to be talking about, but that was pretty much the topic of conversation for the entire day. And, if you could hear her audio, that was at the beginning of the day. You can tell it was a full house, and certainly they were talking about fentanyl and all. And in this picture, you can see all those posters in the background of, God, it's so fucking heartbreaking, what we kind of call the faces of fentanyl. And I do have 2 other videos we're going to show y'all where I walked those posters. And we'll show those to y'all shortly. But, yeah, it's kind of like the phrase is the faces of fentanyl. These were all people that died from a fentanyl overdose. Not intentionally, and in most cases didn't even know they were fucking taking fentanyl. They bought some shit pills off the street that, were fake pills and laced with fentanyl and ended up dying, and this is what's happening out there now, y'all. So let's go on to the next picture. This one I thought I'd show y'all because one thing they did at this event that I thought was really a good thing and very cool is every single person there was given a container of Narcan. And if you don't know what Narcan is, it truly is an antidote that saves lives, y'all. And we were all given one, and they didn't do a formal training on how to use it, but certainly they talked a lot about it. And in case you don't know, it's like a nasal spray, as it says on the box there. And, it's not very difficult to administer at all. If somebody's passed out from an opiate overdose or fentanyl overdose, fentanyl, of course, is an opiate, you administer this nasal spray, and if they haven't gone too far, it can literally kind of bring them out of their unconsciousness and, save their life. And as a little sidebar to this, y'all, man, I can't go into it too much right now. We'll talk about it on a future episode of the show, but my fucking life is so fucking bizarre sometimes. Yesterday, just yesterday, I witnessed an opiate overdose where the guy in this hotel that I was at was passed out on the floor. And I just happened to come across this. And when I got there, there were just maybe 3 people trying to help this guy. And I don't know why, something told me to start recording it. And I did. I started recording this on my telephone. And I have an 8-minute video of these people trying like hell to bring this guy back to life. I would have interjected, but there really wasn't anything I could do that they weren't already doing. And eventually, and they gave him 2 doses of Narcan, didn't bring him out of it. And of course, somebody called 911, and 911 came, and to the best of what I observed, they gave him 2 more Narcan sprays. And eventually, he came out of it and stood up and then sat up. I have this all on video, y'all. Just happened yesterday. I was thinking about showing it today, but I've decided I'm not even sure if I'm ever going to show it. When somebody is in public, whether they're the person who's OD'd, the person or people trying to help them, the EMTs, the paramedics, Dean, maybe you could even help me out with this. My understanding is if you're out in public, I can fucking film whatever the fuck I want to, and that's public information. I can do whatever I want with it. I can show it. I'm trying to be respectful because hopefully that guy, by the time I stopped filming, it was an 8-minute video. He was still sitting there with the paramedics and EMTs, and I'm sure they probably carted him off to the hospital afterwards, and hopefully he's okay. In this video, his own mother was there.
Oh,
And
wow.
she's like screaming and crying, my son, and other people. And it's just this very emotional, powerful video. I watched it again this morning, and I thought, man, it's still too fresh in my, you know, mental state and whatnot. Um, so I want to sit on that for a little bit, but I just thought I'd talk about it because this photo right here that they, distributed all these doses of Narcan to everybody at the summit just a few days ago. That's what I'm saying. It's fucking my mind. My life is so bizarre. Just literally a few days ago, I go to this fentanyl summit. Everybody's given a dose of Narcan, and a few days later, I actually see an OD live in person. Guy's laying unconscious on the floor, gets administered Narcan, and it saves his fucking life. So anyway, not to chew up too much time on that, but I am curious, Dean, what's your thoughts and feelings about me having this video? Because it's fucking powerful. I'm telling you, anybody else that'll see it, your fucking jaw will drop when you see this. And I'm
Well,
just
to
trying to be
respect the
respectful of
person,
other people's privacy and all. What do you think?
I think that maybe to show respect for the person, we might consider blurring his face.
That's an idea. Now, I will say there are several other people in it as well. And I mean, at one point in time, there had to be 10 people milling around where this was all taking place
Mm-hmm.
and all. Would it be possible to maybe even blur all? That'd probably be a hell of a lot of work from an AV perspective. But
Might be.
yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and I think that's a great idea. You and I off the air will look at the video together and see what we decide because I would love to show that video on this program for the impact of it. And again, no disrespect to the person. I hope he's okay. I hope he gets clean. I hope he lives a long, healthy, happy life. Certainly no disrespect to his mom or anybody else that was there that knew him. I did that. That's not my intention at all. I'm trying to be respectful. I have this video though that is so fucking powerful. Oh my god! Wait till you see it, bro. It'll
Yeah.
fucking blow your mind. So I'm just, I just thought I'd put that out there. That yeah, let's talk about it off the air, and we'll decide
Okay.
what we want to do with it. But nonetheless, so moving along, y'all, I couldn't help resist talking about that. And by the way, I should mention this too, man. I was telling my daughter the other day, there was a company there that was up there and they were actively recruiting people. They need outreach people to go out in the community and talk about the fentanyl crisis and train people on administering Narcan. And I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna fuck around and get pulled out of retirement, man. Because if you follow my stuff, y'all, I'm retired from full time work and a career. This is kind of what I do now. This has become almost like a fucking full time job doing this podcast. But I thought, man, like I said, talk about leading a purposeful life, man. There is a genuine need in the community for people to go out and do outreach work and public awareness and training people on Narcan and stuff. And we're going to talk about how bad it is here in the Sac and Bay Area in just a second. So, yeah, man, I have no desire to go back to work full time or even part time for that matter. But being at that event, man, it was just so powerful and emotional. I'm actually considering maybe doing some kind of work like that in the community. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, moving along, y'all. I'm certainly not going to sit here and read to you, but I just thought I'd show these next few slides because I want you to get a feel for just how packed the agenda was and the number of speakers they had there, high profile speakers too. And I like this little catchphrase here. This is called the One Pill Can Kill campaign. You see at the bottom. And then, here again, you can see they had speakers pretty much lined up for 20 minutes to a half hour per topic and session. And like I said, y'all, you can see that for the moderator, oh my God, did she ever work cut out for her keeping this thing all on time and everything. And they had a great lunch that was provided to everyone at no charge. And this thing was open to the community. Anybody could attend, concerned citizens, but there were certainly a lot of people from, the prevention world, the treatment world, the faith world, the law enforcement world, the medical world. It was truly a very eclectic group of people that approach addiction and recovery from different angles. So anyway, there's another slide showing the last part of the agenda, and you can see there at the end they even talked about xylazine, that street drug called Trank that we've talked about on this show, that they're mixing in with a lot of this fake pills and heroin on the street now. So anyway, I met some movers and shakers while I was there, y'all. This is the Sacramento County District Attorney, Thean Ho is his name, and he did an outstanding presentation, and I got to meet him afterwards. We chatted for a little bit, and he's a real one, y'all. And not to get into politics or anything, that's not what this show is about, man. I don't get into all that bullshit. What I will tell you is he's a real one, and he gets it. And he does care, so please try to put your politics aside. And, we just want to support these folks that work in government who do understand what a serious problem the opioid crisis and fentanyl crisis is. So shout out to that boy, Thean Ho, the DA for Sac County. He was a nice person. He was very nice to me. Here's another mover and shaker I met with. This is DEA Special Agent in Charge, Bob Barris. And he as well did an outstanding presentation, and I got to chat with him a little bit afterward. It was kind of funny with him, though. You know me, y'all. I'm a talker. I'm so friendly. I can fucking go up and talk to anybody. So I just went up, and I was maybe a little more familiar with him than in his comfort zone at first. He was very, very nice to me. But when I first went up and started talking to him, he was like, "And who are you with again?" And so I told him, I said, "Well, hey, bro, I'm more of a concerned citizen, and I do a podcast." And I told him a little bit about the podcast, and then he was like totally opened up with me, But I get it, man. As a DEA agent, I'm sure he minds his P's and Q's and certainly makes sure he knows about his surroundings wherever he may be. So shout out to Mr. Barris from the DEA. Again, y'all, in law enforcement, these fucking guys do what they can. They're trying to stop this stuff from coming in the country. Again, not to get into politics because people will start talking shit about, oh, we're not doing anything to protect our borders and this and that and the other. And I get all that, His presentation, though, was outstanding. He talked a lot about the history of fentanyl, a lot of stuff we already know, that shit was coming in through China forever, and then they start cracking down on the China pipeline. And so China was like, all right, well, fuck you. We'll start sending it into Mexico. And then they got it into Mexico, and the cartels there are involved. And, they're fucking bringing it over the border and flooding it in the U.S. market. And he talked a lot about that, man. And so the point I'm making is, some people like talking trash and shit about our law enforcement, man, and I don't want to get into that whole debate, but thank God for people like Bob Barris and people that work in the DEA and all that, trying to do what they can to keep that shit off the streets and out of the hands of mostly our kids, it seems like, y'all. So anyway, moving on to the next slide. This is part of his presentation, y'all. And he talked a little bit about fentanyl seizures in the San Francisco area. And by the way, if you're a regular viewer of our show, or maybe you've just come across this episode for the first time watching our show and you like our stuff, go back about, I don't know, what was it, Dean, about 3 or 4 episodes ago, where I actually took a trip over to San Francisco and went into the hood, the notorious Tenderloin district, where I'm lucky I escaped alive. Had a fucking rock thrown into the window of my car and all kinds of shit, because I went over there to see if it was as bad as everything we're hearing in the news, and it was, and worse. Well, nonetheless, Mr. Barris showed this slide. that shows the increase in the fentanyl seizures just in the DEA San Fran division from 2020, where you can see in kilograms it was as little as 13, to last year 216, and we're on pace here in August to blow that out of the water. They're already to 215 kilograms this year, and we're only in August. And then he talked about Sac as well, where I live here in Sacramento. And look at the increase there, y'all. From 2020, all they seized was, well, I shouldn't say all, even 2 kilograms is still a lot. And last year, it was 85, almost 86 kilograms of fentanyl. And this year, again, they're on pace to blow that out of the water, already to 54 in just August. So, man, if you think this opioid epidemic and fentanyl thing is getting better, you are badly mistaken. It is getting worse all the time. And, you know, events like this summit that was put on are much needed in the community. And so this was a sad slide to see, but there again, in Sac County, you can see the fentanyl-related OD deaths. In 2020, there were 54. In 2021, 152. And last year, 178. And, you know, we'll see where we're at the end of this year, but it's just sad, man. You know, and let's face it, you know, when we look at shit like this, it's numbers. But we got to remember, these are people, y'all. These are our sons, our daughters, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our nieces, our nephews, our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers. They're not just fucking numbers, y'all. And so with all that said, I think it's a perfect time, not that maybe that's the best word, I think it's an appropriate time for us to show those 2 videos I talked about. And these are hard to watch, y'all. They're fucking heartbreaking. They're about a minute, maybe a little over a minute apiece. And these are those videos I mentioned earlier that we'll call the faces of fentanyl. And these are all those posters they had up at the front of the room at this conference of people that have died, you know, in the past, you know, couple of years from an accidental fentanyl overdose. So, Dean, if you would, let's go ahead and play the first video. So yeah, y'all, that's the first video. We've got another one, and
actually, I'm not sure we do. I loaded 3, but 2 of them look identical, so that might be the only other one.
Is it identical? Because they
like
were
the same length and the same picture.
Okay, well, nonetheless, y'all, it was the same type of video. They had posters set up on one side of the room and then posters set up on the other side. So I did a walkthrough of each side. And yeah, Kelly just chimed in the chat, heartbreaking, just so sad. And the other video is more of the same. It's exactly the same, just more people like what we just saw there. So yeah, I very well may have, done, when I sent them to you, Dean, I may have accidentally sent you the same one twice, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, y'all, you get the idea. And if you would, Dean, maybe take another look at that. If not, we'll move on. So This was another part of Mr. Barris's presentation that I thought was interesting, because they talked about fentanyl and how there is uh, positive medical attributes to fentanyl. That's where fentanyl originated, y'all. It's not like some, drug dealer mixed this shit up in the kitchen sink and just starts selling it on the streets. It's been, medication used in treating severely sick, cancer patients and people to that nature. And so he showed this medical grade fentanyl laboratory where they manufacture it, and you get the idea. You can see it's spick and span and very professionally designed. And then he showed this next slide of an illicit fentanyl laboratory, and you can see. Holy camole, this shit's just out in the field, fucking trash, dirty, nasty. I've seen things similar to this in documentaries about how they make cocaine, in the jungles of fucking Colombia or whatever. I'm sure other people have seen that kind of stuff too. And, this was an interesting contrast. Again, this is where the medical grade fentanyl is made, and this is where the shit on the streets made. So you get the idea, y'all. It ain't pretty. This next slide, and we're going to move along here from the summit in just a second, y'all, but I thought this was a good slide to show. This was from a different presenter, and this was definitely one of the overall feelings at this summit, that what's one of the biggest problems with people who get hooked on opiates as far as getting clean? And it talked about stigma. And they just kept talking over and over about how it's still the largest barrier to engagement for treatment. And I've talked about on the show before that, I hope we get to anybody with this show that might be looking for help. I also have always kind of had this hope that maybe we might get through to somebody from the professional world where I came from. I worked in corporate America for most of my career, 30 years in the news media and very conservative company and corporation I worked for, where it is difficult for people to come out of the closet, if you will, when it comes to substance abuse and getting hooked on, drugs, medication, booze, whatever the fuck, people, understandably so, are concerned about their livelihood. Most of the time, though, it's all ego shit. Oh, God, what are people going to think of me? Oh, my God, they're going to think I'm crazy, whatever the fuck. And I get that. Certainly, that was a big part for me, as I talked about earlier in the show, with coming out of the closet, if you will, with my addiction and putting myself on blast out here on a fucking podcast on the internet for all the world to see, as we say, making a goddamn spectacle of myself. I did a reel this week, and I'd actually put that out there with that tune, express yourself, make a spectacle of yourself, What the fuck do we care what other people think, man? We're all just here for a short whisper. Life is short, man, but we're so fucking caught up in what other people are going to think. Oh, my God, what are people going to think about me? Fuck that stigma, man. Drug addiction affects every family I've ever known in some fashion, not to mention people I've known, so, and it knows no boundaries. It affects black, white, Latino, Arabic, Puerto Rican, you name it, the black, gay, straight, bi, white, old, young, short, tall, it doesn't matter. You get the idea, y'all, of what I'm saying. It knows no boundaries. And this whole stigma of, well, they're just a fucking degenerate and, have no moral compass or whatever. No, it ain't like that. And they talked about this there was a doctor that spoke at this summit, and he talked about some research that he did. I'm going to mention this and then we'll move on, where he said that their research shows about 60% of the people who are or have been prescribed opiate medication for a surgery, cancer, whatever the case may be, will get a prescription of, say, like 90 pills to use over the course of maybe a month. and maybe they'll take 6 to 10 of them and say, "Yeah, that's it. I'm done. I don't need no more. I can take some Tylenol," and they're done. And they flush them down the toilet, throw them away, whatever the fuck. Which, to a guy like me, that almost seems like impossible, but that's what he said. Their research shows. Then he said there's about 20% of the people who will start taking them, and they can't take them. It starts making them itchy, which is true. When you first start taking opiate medication, it'll make your skin real itchy, and they just don't like the way it makes them feel, so they just don't take it, and they get by with Tylenol, ibuprofen, whatever. And then there's about 20% of the population of people that take it that have what he called the wow factor, which, of course, I fall in that category, and become physically dependent and addicted to them. And so the point I'm making again is this whole stigma is fucking ridiculous. It's not a moral decision or an ethical decision to be. People don't just wake up one day and say, I think I'll become a drug addict today. It's not that at all. And so I think our society is becoming a little bit more compassionate and understanding to what addiction's all about. Certainly the younger generation, I think, gets it a lot more than people from my generation, certainly in the professional world or anything like that. There's goddamn sure a stigma there, you know what I mean? Even to the point where I've even been told, without going into, big detail about it, that, there were certain people laughing at me, when I came out about this whole thing, which, don't bother me. I don't give a fuck. But I got that feedback from some former coworkers and colleagues like, "Hey, man, I'm just letting you know, and it may even sound like it was a little bit of gossip, which maybe it was, I guess, but it was actually just somebody who cares about me giving a heads up to me that, hey, man, them people don't care about you as much as you might think they do. They were kind of laughing and joking about it, like, well, I guess Glenn's a druggie, because they didn't know. Like I said, I played it close to the chest in my professional life. So, and in a way, that's even kind of been a motivator to me because, I'm sure when I started this fucking podcast, there were probably naysayers saying, well, we'll see how long this fucking lasts, and, it's helped keep me committed, to doing this. Accountability is a big thing for recovering people. But anyhow, with all that said, y'all, the whole stigma thing is a big fucking joke, We're talking about saving our lives here, saving the lives of people we love, Fuck that stigma shit. It's all a crock of shit. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll come down off my soapbox on that one, and let's move along. Yeah.
I found that video. Do you want to watch it?
Okay, great. Well, then let's back up. I just want to go back to that slide, y'all. This is the slide of the fentanyl-related overdoses just in Sac County. And so, as you know, we showed the one video of the faces of fentanyl, of all the young people that died. And then I walked over to the other side of the room and took a video of the posters over there. So, Dean, thanks for finding that and pulling it up. Let's go ahead and give it a look. just as Kelly wrote in the chat, it is heartbreaking, just so sad, and if you notice, and yeah, I'm sure you did in all those posters of both videos, it's all younger people, and none of them people uh, knew they were going to die when they took the drugs they did that were laced with fentanyl. They very well, in their stories, for all of them, we had actually some of the mothers of some of those people were there and spoke. And, in a lot of cases, they, got a hold of some fake pills, thought they were taking a legit Percocet or whatever the case may be, but it was laced with fentanyl that was mixed in some fucking bullshit lab like this. And our boy Pete is still with us. Pete, thanks for hanging with us the whole show. He just chimed in the chat. Those are not just overdoses. Those are someone's brothers, sons, daughters, and others. Think about all the people affected by their deaths. That's exactly right, Pete. It's heartbreaking. And keep in mind, y'all, those are here just in Sac County, where I live. This is going on all across the United States, in every state, every city, every small town. That was just, as we say, just kind of scratching the surface. And it's heartbreaking. Man, I'll tell you, not to get too far, off on this, but it's like even myself, I feel like I'm living on borrowed time, y'all, because, I got a hold of some of them fake pills, Like I said, I have my war stories, and I don't want to take up too much more time on today's podcast and going into my war stories, but that could have been me. That certainly could have been me, and I just feel I almost have survivor's guilt in a way sometimes, because it could have been me. And when you get involved in 12-step programs, that we talk a lot about our friend Shebang, who's been a guest on the show many times, that there's meetings him and I have been to, and there'll be somebody sitting at the same table talking about trying to stay clean, and then a couple days later you go to the meeting and they're not there, and you hear that they went back out, got a hold of some fake pills, and fucking died. So yeah, man, it's just heartbreaking, y'all. But I wanted to share that because I think it is a powerful message. And hopefully if there's anybody that is watching or listening to us live or comes across the recorded version of this and you're wanting to get clean, you're wanting to kick, just hopefully another motivator to realize if you don't, that could happen to you as well. So, okay, y'all, that was it. Big shout out and props again to everybody that was involved in putting that Fentanyl Awareness and Action Summit on in Sacramento last week. It was top shelf. Y'all did an excellent job. And more to come on that, y'all. I've signed up to, receive regular emails and updates from some of the groups that were there, Safer Sacramento and others. So anyway, here's another event I went to since we were on last week, and I just got back from there late last night, and I had no idea I was going to go kind of up until the last minute. Without going into a long story, my daughter took a flight out of San Francisco Airport, so I drove her over there a couple of days ago, and while I was there, I figured, well, shit, I'm all the way over here on the coast, man. I'm going to go to this NA convention in Oakland, and it's called the Bay Area Convention of Narcotics Anonymous, and this was the theme this year, Out of the Darkness and Into the Light. And it was just their third annual one. And if you're a follower of our program, I went to the one in South Florida last weekend. That was their 27th annual one. And they do have lots of other conventions in, California, both NAAA, fucking A, whatever. In fact, there's a big Southern California convention coming up at the end of October I'm planning on going to down in the Anaheim area. But in the Bay Area, which is kind of a combination of Oaktown and San Fran, it seemed like it was mostly Oakland people there. They started this one just a few years ago. And so I went, man, and I stayed the night. I got there Friday night and saw some speakers, and there was some entertainment there. Shout out to my boys from Moving Forward Music. Tyler Ullum, Josh Bidart were there, and they did a show. And I wanted to show some video of it today, but just kind of ran out of time trying to get them ready. But we talked about them being guests on the podcast, and they're going to come actually right here to the Dare Me podcast studio. We'll have them live here in the studio, hopefully coming up within the next month or so. But anyways, I had a blast there Friday night, and then I was there all day Saturday. And, if you're not familiar, these NA conventions, AA conventions, they have all day different seminars, workshops, speakers. People get together for meals and talk about recovery and staying clean. And they have comedy shows and dances with DJs. And then, of course, the highlight of those events is always what they call the clean time countdown or sobriety countdown if it's an AA one. And they start at 55 years or whatever the fuck, and then they work their way down. And so that is always the highlight of the event. And yours truly got to stand up and yell and hoot and holler at 2 years along with all my other fellow deuces. And man, there were a lot of people there. I didn't take video or pictures there because I do try to, even though I put myself out there and recover out loud, I do try to respect other people's anonymity at certainly 12-step events. I got pictures and stuff of people there, and I always extend the courtesy of asking them if they would mind if I put them on social media, and I've never had somebody tell me no, but I just didn't load any on here. But I can tell you there were easily a couple thousand people there, and man, did we have a ball. Oh my God, I gotta tell you, they know how to put a convention on in the Bay Area there, man. And it was almost like night and day going from South Florida, which I love that South Florida convention. I've been many times over the years, but certainly was some cultural differences. The South Florida one is almost all white people, Latinos. There's some black people there. This one in the Bay Area was probably about 80 to 90% black folks, and there were some Filipinos there, and then white people like me. But when you go to NA, I got a friend of mine, Dave. He says, "Man, I can go anywhere. I got a NA pass," and that's kind of how I feel. It's true. You go any fucking where you want, man. We just love each other. Because we all have that common bond at the end of the day. When you boil it down to the least common denominator, it's all about we're trying to help save each other's lives, And we've all lost people to this sickness of addiction and shit. So there ain't no racial divide or anything. Some of that shit may go on here and there from time to time, but as overall and as a whole, and NAA, fucking A, you go to different parts of town, you're going to get different types of ethnicities, races, personalities, and all. But, people cross those city boundaries and state boundaries all the time, go all over the world. In fact, I got a buddy of mine, Greg from SAC. Shout out, Greg, if you see this. He's over in Ireland right now and been posting stuff about how he's meeting up with people in the program, and they've been so nice to him, picking them up, driving them around, showing them around and shit. So, yeah, man, when you got an NA pass, you can go anywhere in the fucking world. All you got to do is walk in a meeting, and you feel right at home, And that's exactly how I felt in Oakland. Man, I did know some people there. There were a lot of people that went over from Sacramento that I got to see and hang out with. Even my sponsor, Shay, shout out Shay. We sat together at the Clean Time Countdown. So anyway, I could go on and on and on about that convention, y'all, but I will go back to that one. It was off the chain. Kind of remind me of the Detroit convention, DACNA, they call it, Detroit Area Convention Event. It was like that in a lot of ways. I will tell you, there were some differences. If you're in an area or go to a meeting or convention where you start feeling like, hey, fucking NA went and got all politically correct on me, don't even like you mentioning a certain drug or whatever the fuck by name, they don't want to trigger nobody. They do not get politically correct in the Bay Area. Thank God, because I am that kind of guy. I love it. Man, oh my God. And I don't say that in a disrespectful way. I say that in a way where I'm giving them props, man. It was a party. Oh my God, it was so much fun. So anyway, just thought I'd talk a little bit about that one. Now I want to shift gears, y'all, and talk about this. And Pete, if you're still with us, bro, I can't thank you enough for sending me the DM you did this morning about this event. and this foundation. Now, in case you didn't know, y'all, there is a guy by the name of Ken Daniels. He is the play by play announcer for the Detroit Red Wings hockey team in the NHL. And he has been with them for like 25 years. And hey, I guess Pete's still with us. So he sent me a message and said, hey, man, I don't know if you could do this on the podcast, but thought you might want to give a shout out to this event they're doing this coming weekend. And incidentally, Pete, I'm planning on going. But the Jamie Daniels Foundation is the name of this group. Ken Daniels' son, unfortunately, is one of those faces of fentanyl, so to speak. I don't know if he died specifically from a fentanyl overdose, but he did die from an opiate overdose. And he was just a young man, 20-ish, we'll say. And his name was Jamie. And there is a very interesting story to how he became addicted and how he ended up passing away. And it would take me a long time to tell it on this show. So what I'd like to do instead is recommend that if you're following along with us, go to their website. You can Google it, Jamie Daniels Foundation. I guarantee it'll come right up. And you just click that tab there at the top, and it'll have a drop down with all kinds of information, what they're about and everything else. And at the end of the day, Jamie's parents, Ken and his wife, formed this foundation after Jamie passed away to try to help mostly young people, the youth, to stay off of drugs. It's a prevention effort. Although they do distribute. They're a nonprofit, and they distribute different grant funds to, I think, not just prevention, but other areas of drug addiction and recovery as well. And so, anyway, I pulled this from their homepage, and you can see I talked about the whole stigma thing earlier, how they talked about it at the Fentanyl Summit in Sacramento, and here on the Jamie Daniels Foundation website, they posted that the biggest killer out there is the stigma. That stigma keeps people in the shadows, and it keeps people from coming forward and asking for help, and keeps families from admitting there's a problem. And that's a quote from the former U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams. And not to take the focus off of those statements, y'all, I will say that, as I've said on this program many times, I will sometimes second guess myself, like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? What have I done? Oh my God. Like you said, Dean, when we started this show, you told me, if you remember, asking me, Glenn, you sure you want to put yourself out there like this? Once you ring that bell, there ain't no unringing it, and certainly I've felt self-conscious about it. But when I read stuff like this, man, I know we're doing exactly what we should be doing, And I can't thank you enough, Dean, for, being on board with, co-hosting this program with me, because I do think, I have no doubt, Dean, we have already made a difference with helping to reduce that stigma involved, And I know, you're not an addict, and you come at this from a different approach, which I think is so important, You don't want people just from the recovery community, coming at this challenge we have for all of us in the society. It's great getting other perspectives, and so. Anyway, I know I say it a lot, Dean, but I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your support of us doing this podcast, because it is all about breaking down barriers sometimes with this whole stigma. And so, anyway, going along on this whole thing, this is what Pete was telling me about, is they're doing a benefit to raise money for the foundation. And again, the proceeds they use to give grant funding to different organizations working to, on prevention in the community when it comes to drugs and all that. And they're doing a roast and toast for two famous Detroit Red Wing hockey players, Thomas Holstrom and Nicholas Lidstrom. If you're a hockey fan, those dudes were fucking legends for the Red Wings in the NHL. And so I put up what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, what they call the champion ticket. It ain't cheap. It's a few $100, but that includes a dinner, they're doing like, a cocktail hour. Obviously, I don't fucking drink, but I'll drink fucking soda. With any luck, maybe they'll have my Heineken NA0 beers or something, but I don't even give a fuck. I'm just going there to support the cause and hopefully maybe even, get to maybe talk a little bit with some of the people there and maybe even Ken Daniels and just tell him how much we appreciate what he's doing and, any way we might be able to support the foundation. So Pete just suggested we may want to talk about it and just give a plug to the event coming up Saturday. It'll be at the Motor City Casino right in downtown Detroit. And as it turns out, I can go because the wedding I'm going to up there is on Friday. So I'm going to go out there on Saturday and go to the cocktail and hors d'oeuvres hour and then have the sit-down dinner and then watch the roast. Now, if you want to go just for the roast and toast, those tickets are just $125. So again, for some people it ain't cheap. It's $100, $125. But it's just going to be a real fun event. There's other former Red Wing players that are going to be there too. If you read the whole thing, Chris Draper will be there, and you see the rest. I'm not going to read to you, but anyway, I had known, I remember, Pete, if you're still with us and the rest of our viewers and listeners, I remember hearing about this in the news, because Ken Daniels, he's a fucking legend, in broadcasting in Detroit, and I remember hearing some, but I didn't know as much about the foundation as I do now, having read about it. Because when I read your message this morning, Pete, I dug right in. I pulled it right up and read all about it. I'm like, holy shit, this is right in line with what we're doing on the program here. So anyway, want to give a plug to their event coming up Saturday, and it actually tells you right online how many tickets are left. And before the show, I checked, and they had 61 of these tickets left, the champion ticket. So I'm sure if you want to go, you can still get one. And then, the other ones, there's plenty of seats left as well. And you can even get a whole table if you want. So anyway, that's it on the slide, y'all. And that pretty much brings us full circle for the program. Jesus Christ, how long we been going? We've been going 2 hours and 20 minutes. I've been running my damn mouth. I got to take a pause.
Hey, I found a meme. I was kind of on Facebook for a minute looking at some stuff, and I found a meme if you want me to play it.
Oh, that's right. I did load some memes, actually.
I didn't see any, so that was
Oh,
it.
okay. Well, what meme?
Want me to throw one at you?
Yeah, I sent a few over. I don't know what happened to them because I had... remember I told you I wanted to talk about the Barbie movie?
If they came in late, I just didn't. So.
Yeah, well, what'd you pull up? Let's see the meme, because we do always like to show a funny meme at the end of the show. Just try to end things on a humorous note. So what do we got here? Dean just dropping this on us right now. After Knight Rider ended, Kit fell on hard times. He developed a meth habit, moved to Oklahoma, and living with a stripper named Tiffany in a trailer court. Yeah. Well... as I've mentioned on earlier shows, I subscribe to, some of these Facebook pages and different websites. One of them is called Offensive Recovery Memes. And for those who don't have a good sense of humor, some of them are pretty offensive. But, hey, I try to have a sense of humor about it because, let's face it, man, it's a very sad topic. You think about, those Faces of Fentanyl videos we shown. You think about, young guys like Jamie Daniels and, that whole thing. It's heartbreaking, as Kelly in our chat said. It's just so sad, And Pete said, thank you, my old friend. No, thank you, bro. Thank you for suggesting we talk about that event. And absolutely. And then Pete chimed in, speaking of humor, I hope you're playing foosball because I might be able to take you now. Yeah, we used to play foosball when we were younger. Were you a foosball player, Dean, when you were a younger guy, in your teens?
Not so much.
Yeah, we used to play. I don't know if you remember, Pete, but there was a place we used to go to called Jack's Parlor, man, and they used to have these foosball for foosball aficionados. You'll remember there were foosball tables that were called Garlando tables, and then you had the championship tables that they did tournaments on. I used to love them old Garlando tables because if you scored a goal and you really shot that thing hard, man, it had a metal back and it made a real loud noise and people would look, you know.
Okay, I did see them. They were loaded up after we went live, so I
Oh,
never
the
got
funny
those.
memes.
Yeah,
Okay. All
here's
right.
here's Kermit.
Okay, all right. Kermit, yeah, this is one again. Like I said, y'all, I try to, it's such a serious topic. And by the way, Pete said Jackson Arcade 5. Yeah, that was at the old Westland Mall. But, we try to have a sense of humor about it. It's horrifying what's happening out there. People are dying, lives are being destroyed and ruined. At the end of the day, life is short, man. We got to try to have a sense of humor, and so that's why I show these types of memes. Not to be disrespectful, just try to have a little laugh at our own expense. And so anyway, this one I thought was funny. Kermit the Frog, where you can see he's saying, "Hello, is this the helpline for drug addicts?" Yes, he says, "Can I borrow $20?" He needs to get him a 20. So that was funny. Okay, what's the next one, Dean? What else do we have?
Kind of working down.
Oh, okay. Well, this one, we kind of need to show the Bugs Bunny one first because this kind of ties into it. So, yeah, I posted this last week, y'all. It was hot as hell. It's been a hot summer here in Sacramento. It was 107 degrees the other day. And so I had this Bugs Bunny meme in my files, and I just thought it was funny as hell to put next to that. And I posted it. A lot of people on social media thought that was funny. So then, if you go back to the cake, and that's true, by the way, I don't care. I do still like summer better than winter. But I just happened to come across this one, and I thought, oh, that'd be funny to show. I'm sorry for what I said when it was 109 degrees outside. So, yeah, sometimes we say things when we're, out in the heat or not the most comfortable that we want to take back later or apologize for. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then what else did we have? Is it the... Oh, yeah. Well, I thought I'd show this one because... I am about to go visit family up in Southeast Michigan in the Detroit area there. And I'll be seeing some family I haven't seen in a long time. And, man, I get together with family, and it's like, I tell you what, y'all, I don't drag this on too much longer, but I am the youngest of 6 kids. And God, when we were all younger, I hated being the youngest. And now that we're all older, I never let them forget who the youngest is. But man, we all had our little trials and tribulations coming up and everything. And I will say, I truly probably am the black sheep of the family, with all my shit that has happened in my life. I ain't the only one, but yeah, mine was pretty out there and prominent. So I thought, oh man, this is going to be interesting at the family reunion coming up for the wedding reception and being back in Detroit for a week. And this just happened to come up, and I said, oh, I got to grab that one. Oh, look, it's me at the family reunion. So, hey, my bad, I bumped the mic. Here I am, y'all. So, okay, I think there was one more.
That's all I got.
Oh, okay. I had one all about the Barbie movie where I could just tell you it was a guy. I saw this meme this guy posted where he had a little mini bottle of Tabasco sauce, and he was putting it in his eye like it was an eye drop. And I'm trying to remember what the hell it said. It said something like, "This is my comparison to having to go see the Barbie movie." Putting, Tabasco sauce in his eye. Well, I was just going to say.
These, but I will see if I can. No.
Yeah. It was a funny one. But anyway, I know that Barbie movie is real popular and a lot of people have gone to see it. And it's interesting that I know a lot of couples where they went together. In fact, my son and his wife Awana went together, and they get into the whole dress up thing for Halloween and all that. They're really into costumes and very, very creative with that whole stuff. And so anyway, Awana talked Glenn into going. to see Barbie, and they actually wore like, pink and outfits, and Glenn had a pink shirt on and the whole thing, and they posted some pictures about it. And so I have not seen. Oh, there it is. You found it. Things I'd rather do than watch the Barbie movie. But hey, man, it is what it is. It's the trendy thing right now. So I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it. On streaming. I'm not going to go out of my way to go to the theater and see it, but I will watch it. Apparently, it has a positive message of some sort, I've been told. And then I also wanted to say that I went to see a horror movie, and then we'll wrap this up. Dean, I just thought I'd tell you about this and our viewers and listeners. There is a movie at the theater right now called Talk to Me. Holy shit. I have not seen a horror movie that had me freaked out and on the edge of my seat like that in a long, 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 long time. And I thought it was going to be cheesy, but when Shebang and I were visiting Miami, we went to see one of those late night shows at like 11 o'clock at night. And I got to tell you, man, if you're looking for a good horror movie to see, that was a good one. And definitely one I would recommend seeing in the theater if you can. So anyway, y'all, just thought we'd wrap the show up on a humorous note and talking a little bit about, some current events, movies, stuff like that. And with all that being said, y'all, if you stuck with us this whole show, God bless you, because we've been going, man, 2.5 hours, and Kelly just chimed in. Another great show, guys. Lots of great info to help people. Keep doing it. Great job as usual. Oh, my God. Kelly, see, that's the kind of stuff, y'all, that just keeps us going, We keep getting feedback like that. How could we stop now, And I meant to mention that earlier. Like I said, y'all, when I started the podcast, I made a commitment that we'd do this for a year. And so, I kind of figured, okay, if we do it a year, take a couple weeks off for, holidays, vacation time, whatever, we'll probably get 50 episodes in a year's time. It's 52 weeks in a year. And, we'll go live in Detroit next week. And then the weekend after that, it's 25 episodes. We'll already be halfway to the 50. After that, Dean, you and I talked about this, with a lot of podcasts out there on different platforms, they do seasons, where they don't necessarily go live for one or go every week all year long. So, we'll just kind of see where we're at the end of the year. Maybe we'll keep going, or maybe we'll get into doing like a season, where maybe we put 20 episodes in the can and then take a break for 6 months and even maybe replay them, or 3 months, or whatever the fuck. I don't know, But we'll see, But Kelly, thank you for that comment. Pete, thank you for your message earlier today. And everyone that sends us the positive feedback we get on what we're doing here. It's obviously a little bit of an unusual program. We just kind of, nothing scripted, y'all. This is all almost shoot from the hip. Obviously, we plan some things out, a little outline. We have slides and videos lined up. We have a pretty good idea of, what we're going to talk about and do. But definitely, as I said earlier, something a little different that hopefully helps some people. And as I often say on this show, y'all, if you're a person that's struggling with addiction and you happen to come across our stuff, whether you're watching live or you catch the recorded version of this, hopefully we've shared some information with you that might be helpful, or at the very least inspiring, motivational for you to work on getting clean and kicking. Again, I encourage you to go back, watch, and listen to all the previous episodes where we talk about some very specific things you can do. We talked a little bit about, Kratom and weed and even mention subs and meth a little bit on this show. You know, we go into great detail on some of those things on some of the previous episodes. So you can go to the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel, look back at all that stuff. But, you know, at the very least, when you're kicking dope, man, the clock is like moving at a snail's pace. It's like you're fucking climbing the walls. And so you're looking for stuff online or on TV to help you kill some time. And so, you know, I've talked on here about how we go long sometimes with this show, and how I know I can get long-winded, and especially when we have guests on here, it goes on for a while. I'm okay with that, you know, because if we're giving people an outlet or something to help them kill time, to follow along with our content, to watch and listen, even if maybe they watch a little bit, come back later, because to expect somebody to stick 2.5 hours, you know, that's a pretty long time for a fucking podcast. But I know even with myself, with some I listen to, you know, I'll knock out a little bit in the car, come back to it later, what have you. And so hopefully that may be the case with our podcast, too, for some people that we hopefully are helping that tune in. And for those of y'all who, you know, are regular listeners and viewers who aren't caught up in addiction or have never had a problem with addiction, I know we have a lot of people that follow this show who aren't caught up in all that, or people who actually are clean and have been living clean for a long time, but just kind of enjoy our content, which we really appreciate. We try to be entertaining. You know, we hope that it may be a show you might be able to pass on to somebody that you may know who may be struggling with addiction, whether it's a family member, friend, colleague, or what have you. So anyhow, with all that said, y'all, it has been a couple 2.5 hours, and I think we've come full circle, all things considered. Mm-hmm. I think it was a pretty in-depth and good show. And Dean, if you don't think I saw you just kind of roll your eyes, you are badly mistaken. I'm just kidding you, man. I know Dean's like, all right, bro, let's bring it on home. Thank you again, Dean, for everything you did, you know, with today's show, with the videos and the slides and keeping us on the air and all that stuff, bro. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No. It's
okay.
been a hell of a week, and we look forward to a hell of a next week, and we'll see you in Detroit next week.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'll keep you posted, bro, on hopefully we're going to be able to have those boys from Rare Hearted on, or at least one of the performers in that group, live from Detroit next week. But either way, if them guys are booked and can't do the show, we'll have them on soon, if not next Sunday. But either way, we will go live from Detroit City next Sunday. I'm sure I'll have some kind of an update on the Jamie Daniels Foundation event that I talked about that I'm going to go to on Saturday to support that group. And, yeah, it should be a fun show from my hometown, Detroit City, next week. And Pete, if you're still with us, bro, I'll be in touch soon, and looking forward to seeing you, man, after all these years while I'm up there, Kelly, and everybody that I'm, hoping to meet up with, even if it's just for a quick snack or coffee or whatever while I'm there. You know how it is when you go back and visit your hometown. You get pulled in a million different directions, but I'm definitely going to make time to meet with some people. So anyhow, with all that said, Dean, thanks again. Yes. And for those of y'all that, stuck with us the whole show, we appreciate it. And we hope that you enjoyed the program, and we'll talk to you next time on the Dare Me podcast. Peace, y'all.